So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Katie Baker. I'm a communications professional. I do a lot of work in Virginia, and I'm here representing the Economic Security Project and the Child Tax Credit Alliance today. And very excited to be here with some very powerful women from rural Virginia who are going to talk about the importance of the expanded child tax credit for rural Virginia. And we're going to be calling on the Republican members of Congress to please support extending this important benefit beyond 2021. The child tax credit is something that 90% of American families qualify for. There are already over about 1.6 million Virginia children whose families have already benefited from this. We've got a study that shows Virginia families are using the child tax credit to do things like buy food, make their rent and mortgages, and pay down debt. So this is something that is really helping a lot of families through this pandemic. And we need to be able to continue with the child tax credit beyond just 2021. And if Congress were to make it permanent, it would actually end child poverty for 96,000 Virginia children. So with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and share a video message from Jennifer Lewis, who is a Democrat running for Congress in Virginia's 6th Congressional District. Mary, can we go ahead and play that video from Jennifer?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Lewis, and I'm running for Congress in the 6th District in 2022. I previously ran in 2018 and for the House of Delegates in the 20th District in 2019. I am here today to talk to you about the child tax credit. I've talked to numerous families, including my sisters, who have found this to be extremely important to their family. My one sister said she used it to pay daycare costs. Cost that has been increasing for her and many families that I talk to. The cost of daycare is almost the same, about the same as her salary for the job that she works. So to think of working so hard and your salary just goes to daycare is something that I've always struggled with when I hear parents tell me that story. So talking to my sisters, they're using it for daycare cost. Some of them are putting a little bit in their savings account for that rainy day fund, paying for upcoming childcare costs and tuition costs and sports costs. All of these things are extremely important to our families. And when we talk about ending child poverty, this is how we end child poverty, is giving child tax credits to parents who need it and who are using it in great ways and are finding it to be very beneficial to their life and their overall budget. And being able to save, which is something that a lot of parents often talk to me about, that they can't save because they're barely getting by now. And when they think about having their kids and wanting to prepare them for college and think about those costs, it's all things that really stress out our parents. And if there's anything that we can do to make our parents' lives a little bit easier, I think we should be doing it. So as a candidate and as a person, I'm not a mother myself, but I do wholly support extending the child care tax credit, and eventually making it permanent would be a great idea as well. I think it's about time that we really get serious about caring about our children and making sure that childhood poverty is something that we can erase, because we can if we have the willpower to do it and we have the right elected officials that will make this their priority. And I'm here to tell you today, ending childhood poverty is one of my goals. As a mental health worker, I see that childhood poverty often leads to other things. And if it's something that we can address now and be preventative about, I think it will end up making our children's lives so much better, which will then and impact our whole entire community, and our whole entire community will be healthier and happier. So I am here to say that I support the child. That's a mouthful. I support the child care tax credit extension, and then of course working to make it permanent. Thanks, everybody.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Maricela, and thank you for that important message from Jennifer Lewis, who again is running for Congress in Virginia's 6th Congressional District. Next, we will hear remarks from Jennifer Kitchen, who is the Democratic nominee in the House of Delegates for House District 25.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Jennifer Kitchen, and I'm running to represent Virginia's 25th District in the House of Delegates. Having grown up in rural Virginia, I am all too familiar with the economic struggles that rural Virginians face. I was born and raised in Augusta County, and having grown up on farms with my parents working in factories, I experienced firsthand the challenges of a rural economy. Children who grow up in rural communities are more likely to be victims of childhood poverty compared to urban areas. And poverty rates in rural Virginia are roughly 16%. That's 7% higher than urban areas in the Commonwealth. With many adults losing their jobs and struggling to make ends meet due to the COVID pandemic, rural children are at risk of falling deeper into poverty. By extending the child tax credit, rural children have a better chance of escaping persistent child poverty. And extra money for their parents means that they can afford more food, access to updated infrastructure, and in some cases, a stable environment to live in as parents can make rent and mortgage payments. I cannot stress enough how much the child tax credit helps Virginia families keep afloat and helps keep women in the workforce. I remember when my kids were younger, I had to close my small business because I couldn't afford childcare. And this tax credit will help provide families with additional income to help cover childcare expenses and other needs for their families without having to leave the workforce for extended periods. And as we heard Jennifer Lewis talk about the wonderful benefits of the child tax credit for Virginians as a whole, I am personally asking for our representatives to remember our rural communities as they make this decision. Rural Virginia is often hit hardest by economic hardship and yet still overlooked in policy decisions. By refusing to extend the expanded child tax credit, representatives will be showing rural Virginians that they remain overlooked. And I hope that our representatives will show rural Virginia that we do matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I know you've got an election in just a few weeks here, so grateful for your time here to be talking about this important issue. Next, we will have Flo Kettner. Flo was the Democratic nominee in 2019 for State Senate District 19 and the Democratic nominee for House of Delegates District 7 in 2017. Thank you so much for being here, Flo.
Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me here. So you've heard already once. Many of us have grown up in the rural communities. I did more than just growing up in the rural community. I started with my grandmother. My mother disappeared and I grew up with her. And we didn't have anything. Like, we were on food stamps. We had I wasn't able to have new clothes for years. It was always hand-me-downs or something used a friend gave me. I wasn't able to buy simple things at school, like buying into the little gadgets and things they would have us do for PTA events. I couldn't afford those. So, we're talking children who just want to participate and their parents can't afford to participate. And I was talking to actually one of my neighbors up the street, because I still live in the mountains where we don't have public transportation everywhere. And she was telling me that she has been wanting to get a job, but she, as usual with the catch-22, doesn't have the car to get the job to pay for the car. And so we had a school field trip for our 5th graders yesterday, and they couldn't afford the field trip. Now, thankfully, our school is used to this, which it shouldn't have to be, where they have asked other parents, would you donate so other children can come that couldn't normally afford? These are the little things that people don't think about. Families have to choose between paying for food or $10 for a kid to go see this field trip that's an educational scientific experiment that they're involved in with their hands and their eyes, and they're talking to people. And to get the job, all she needed was the ability to get to work, even if it's just getting an Uber to get started. And she doesn't have that. These child tax credits actually help the parents get to work. She wants to work. We are talking something so simple as helping fund a family. This is a person who wants to be more productive in society. She wants to actually help with her entire household, which includes her children. And the simple things that our kids do, that our kids need. I know for myself, one of the things I was finally able to do was upgrade something so that my daughter could have a room and not have to share, because they are two different ages and they shouldn't both have to go to bed at 7 o'clock in the evening, which I tell her, just read, and I'm sorry. But, we were finally able to make this change because she needed a bed. A mattress seems like such a simple thing, but they're expensive. And I know people whose children are sleeping in the same bed because they can't afford something separate. And that $250 for some of these children is a tremendous amount of money. It's so that they can actually have food that isn't, just the utmost basics with rice and beans. They can actually try having something that is a fried chicken that they did at home because they could afford the oil and not just the basics. We're providing opportunities for our children to expand what they know in their lives, and the parents to feel confident and comfortable that they can provide this for their children. People were worried people aren't going to go out and get jobs. Well, I know someone specifically who would use this to go get a job. And what's worse is she didn't think she qualified, even though she has 3 children. She didn't think because she didn't have a job that she qualified for this tax credit. She didn't think she qualified for the stimulus. So they don't have record of her because she hasn't been working and doesn't have a tax return. She wasn't getting this money. And I explained to her, I was like, here's how you're going to find out how to get it because you deserve it. Your children need this. And she started crying in our driveways while we were waiting for the school bus. She was crying in front of her daughter because all of a sudden she looked at her and she saw the possibilities. These are possibilities that are presented across the board. We're living in rural areas where we're happy if a lot of people can make over poverty wages, and most of them don't. They're making less than $17,000 a year. And they're trying to make sure that they can keep their jobs by getting to jobs to feed their families. And that is what these tax credits do. They take these families who are trying and struggling and they put them back into where we all need to be, into society where we're providing for each other. And the point is to get where we don't need them. But right now we do, and it needs to keep going. And I can't implore my congressman or many of the others enough to make sure that children are being covered. Schools are struggling to feed them enough. And I'm sorry, we shouldn't be worrying about that. The only place they can get a hot meal is at a school. So that's why I support this tax credit, and it must be continued. I've seen the difference that it's made in families, and I see the difference it can make in just one family up the street from me. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell this story, to show the evidence as it stands with direct people.